Parshas Vayeitzei. Yaakov is on a mission, and that is, at the behest of his father, to find a wife at the family of his mother, Lavan, Besuel, and Choron, to find a wife there. And he goes, and he comes upon a well that has a big rock on it, and there are a bunch of shepherds with their sheep. And so he calls to them as follows. This is Perek Chavtes Pasuk Daled, which is 29:4. Vayomer lehem Yaakov, Achai, me'ayin atem. And Yaakov says to these shepherds, my brothers, where are you from? Vayamru mechoron anachnu. They said, we're from Choron, which is good news for him. Why is he calling these strangers my brothers? Let's bookmark that question. Let's finish up this passage and then get back to the question. So then once they establish they're from Choron, he says, Vayomer lehem hayidatem es Lavan ben Achor. Do you know, he says to them, do you know Lavan, the son of Nachor? And they say, Yodanu, we know him. Vayomer lehem hashalom lo. And they ask, is he okay? And they say, yep. They say, Vayomru shalom. Yes, he's okay. V'nei Rachel bito ba'a imatzon. And here, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep. Well, that's good news. And then Yaakov says the following to them. Vayomer hein od hayom gadol. The day is still strong, meaning the sun hasn't set yet. Lo eis hayosef hamikneh. It is not time to gather up the flocks yet. Hashku atzon uluchu. Water the sheep, and then go and have them graze. So Yaakov is giving them a little bit of musar here. He's giving them a little bit of tochacha. And as the commentaries explain, they are either hired hands, in which case they're not doing their job, and he's letting them know because an employee must be loyal and faithful and fulfill the task for which he's being paid, or it's their own sheep, in which case they're just doing it wrong, and he's telling them how to do it. Let's go back to this question that we raised earlier, which is, why is he calling them achai, my brothers? That's typically a term that's reserved for people you know. Now, it could mean an ach, in its most restrictive sense, means a brother, a child of at least one identical parent, meaning we both are from a mother or a father, and frequently both. It can also mean a relative. It can also mean comrades, but it always means somebody who has something in common with another person, and that's why he's my ach, my brother. Ach is the same, has two of the three words of echad, which means one, or achva, which means a close relationship. So an ach can mean a brother or mean someone I'm close to. He doesn't know these people. He's not close to them. Why is he calling them ach? So the Radak says that he's using this term as a device to start off on the right foot with them. They're strangers, and he wants to demonstrate that he bears them no animus, and that he is entering into this discussion with ahava uvedivrei shalom. He's being a nice guy, an open guy. The Nitziv says that Yaakov just made it his point, his mission, to speak gently with other people. The words of the Nitziv are Limei Lishono Ledaber Lashon Ahava V'Reus. He trained his tongue, as it were, to speak in loving terms and in friendly terms. Now the Malbim says that Yaakov used the term achai, my brothers, because he wanted to reprove them. He knew he was going to be saying words that were critical of their behavior, which he ultimately does and says, get back to work. And so he uses this. Rav Yaakov Kaminetsky develops this idea further. And he says that the requirements of hochacha, of reproof, are that they must come, the words of reproof must come from a position of love rather than anger. And the commentaries talk about this in the verse in Vayikra that discusses hochacha. Hochacha, reproof, is actually a biblical obligation. It's a mitzvah midaraisa. Lo sisnas achicha bilvavecha, hocheach tochiach es amisecha v'lo sisa alav chet. You shall not hate your fellow in your heart, but rather you should reprove him and don't bear sin. Now, the Meforshim there elaborate on what this concept means. Why would you bear sin against him? Well, some say that last part of the verse that says, "Lo sisa alav chet," you shall not bear sin against him, means that you have to be careful about the way you reprove somebody. In other words, you can't just tell somebody that they're doing something wrong and they should improve their ways in a manner that, irrespective of the consequences or the way in which you make your argument as you will. You're not allowed to be Malbim Pnei Chaver Barabim, for example. Not allowed to embarrass somebody in public, which means that if there is one individual to whom you are who you are addressing and criticizing, then you shouldn't do it in public. You should do it outside of the earshot of others to reduce potential embarrassment. That goes to the manner in which you give hochacha, you give reproof. According to others, it's lo sisa alav chet, you will not bear sin against him. In other words, the way to not bear sin against him is to engage in a discussion about what you perceive to be his shortcomings. The beginning of the verse says, "Lo sisna zachicha b'vecha." You should not hate your brother in your mind, in your heart. So if you don't talk about it, that will continue, and so you have to thrash it out and address the underlying issue. The Chizkuni says that this obligation of hochacha is because maybe he actually has a good reason for doing something that you feel is a deviation from that which is right. And he has an opportunity, you'll give him an opportunity to be matzdik himself, to justify his actions, and therefore it will remove your suspicion of him or your conviction that he's doing something wrong. And finally, the Ramban says, Lo sisa alav chet, based on a Gemara that says, if somebody has the opportunity, the power, the influence to correct somebody when they see that he's doing something wrong and he doesn't, then that wrong act is attributable also to the person who could have prevented it. Now, that's pretty heavy stuff. Now, we see lots of people doing things that are wrong. Are we supposed to go around and correct everybody? Well, the Gemara says that kishem shemitzvah lomar davar nishma, kach mitzvah shelo lomar davar sheino nishma. Just like it's a mitzvah to say something that, as words of reproof, that somebody will listen to, it's also a mitzvah not to say something if they're not going to listen to you. Which means that engaging in reproof, engaging in hochacha, critique, if you will, requires an honest assessment on the part of the mochiach, on the part of the person who's giving the criticism, who's offering the reproof. He has to make an assessment about whether his words will be accepted. And Rav Yaakov goes further and says that he has to dig down deep in himself and see whether he's reproving out of anger or out of pique or out of a feeling of superiority, and none of those is good. What is good, says Rav Yaakov, based on the halachos that are cited in the Rambam, is that he has to do it out of ahava, out of care. And the language of the Rambam is actually quite explicit. It says, the Rambam says that a person, when giving reproof, has to speak softly, gently, v'yodio she'eno omerlo elo l'tavaso, and he has to tell him that he's really doing it for that person's good. In other words, that hochacha is supposed to come from empathy. You care about another person, and therefore you want him to be able to do things right. Now, my wife's grandfather was is famous within the family that he was quite a swimmer, and when he would see somebody who was swimming with bad form or technique, he would correct him. Now, he wasn't correcting him because he wanted to feel superior. He was correcting him because he had an opportunity to improve somebody else's life. And that's not in a religious sense, That's in a practical sense, but we can extrapolate, we can extract the principle from that, which is that if we see somebody who's got it wrong and we care about them and we'd like them to get it right. Now, we care about all our fellow Jews. We care about all human beings. There are different gradations. There's, our immediate family, our extended family, our community, etc. And the compulsion internally that we feel that is probably more pronounced with people with whom we're closest. And those are the ones who present the biggest opportunity and also the biggest challenge. Frequently, when we criticize people with whom we're close, we end up hurting them. What do they say? You only hurt the ones you love. And so this is a delicate balance. And in any particular case, it's probably better to err on the side of restraint, unless you know that somebody would actually appreciate hearing. Nobody really wants to hear that they're doing something wrong, but they might appreciate having the opportunity to do something right. If you know that, then you should go for it and do it in a way that will maximize the likelihood that the person who hears your critique will take it to heart without too much pain and will actually change his ways. And otherwise, it's probably better to bite your tongue. Have a good Shabbos.